Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, even at home. We provide compassionate, caring support virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here.
I want to talk about something that's been really exciting around here, and that is our partnership with our friends at Ford. Ford Motor Company and your North Texas Ford, or your Texas Ford dealers have announced an expanded sponsorship of the UIL State Championships, solidifying Ford as the official automotive sponsor of the UIL. As part of the new commitment, Ford will now support all UIL extracurricular activities, including athletic, academic, and music state championship competitions. In addition to the sponsorship, Ford is celebrating the 20th anniversary of the prestigious Built Ford Tough Player of the Week Award and Player of the Year Award. This campaign has become one of the most celebrated in Texas high school sports, recognizing standout athletes, student athletes, for their on-field performance, leadership, and commitment to excellence. Ford will honor some of the most decorated players who have received the award over the years, with a special focus being on their achievements both in high school and beyond. Guys like Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, all former Built Ford Tough Players of the Year, and we're partnering with them to amplify that. Dave Campbell's Texas Football, we're going to be amplifying the celebration through our partnership through all of our different platforms, so Texan Live, as well as here on this program and over the course of our social media as well, and TexasFootball.com. We're really, really excited to be partnering with Ford to help celebrate all of the things in Texas high school sports across the landscape. So more to come on that. There's more information on TexasFootball.com, but we're so thrilled to announce that partnership in Texas and the Texas Ford Dealers' expanded partnership as the official automotive sponsor of partner of the UIL State Championships. We certainly are very, very excited about the future there.
Hello, and welcome into a special edition of the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. We've got your regulars here. I'm your host, Carter Yates. That is senior college writer Mike Craven. But we are joined by Jay Arnold of the Aggie War Pod, former Texas A&M defensive lineman, hosting that Aggie War Pod with Mike Craven, talking about Texas A&M and doing a 2025 preview on the team. Jay, let's set the stakes for this upcoming year. Going into 2025, what is the biggest storyline in your opinion for the Texas A&M Aggies?
Man, I feel like there's so many different ways you could go with this. But I think for Texas A&M fans and for everyone watching this program, you expected the defense to be really strong in 2024. Towards the end of the year, especially, I think there were some real struggles with tackling in the Texas A&M defense. I think they just really struggled to shut down teams. So the biggest storyline from my standpoint is, how are you going to replace the guys along the defensive line that you lose, and how are you going to make this defense better in 2025, particularly looking at the tackling towards the end of the year? That's kind of what I've honed in on. I think there's a number of stories again that you could go with, but that to me is the thing that sticks out going into this 2025 season.
Is it as simple as Mike Elko takes over the defense as the defensive coordinator and kind of has more of his fingerprints on that unit?
That's one of the big pieces of the storyline. Is from everything we've heard in the offseason, it looks like Elko is going to be much more hands-on. How is that going to affect the defense? I don't think it's that simple, but I do think that's probably the most determinant factor in the success of A&M's defense in 2025, along with, like I was talking about, the defensive line needing a little bit of replacements up front among the starters.
Yeah, what do those replacements look like right now for Texas A&M? Because they're losing Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, Nick Skirton, Dick Skirleton and Shamar Stewart were two like first, early second round draft picks. Do you expect this unit to have a bit of a fall off, or do you think they're going to reload there?
It's going to be interesting because I think the approach is going to change a little bit too. I think one of the things that Elko touched on is that while the pressure numbers were good, the actual sacks weren't great for A&M in 2024 compared to what you would have expected with guys like Scorton and Shamar Stewart. One of the guys that I'm really excited to see in another full year in the program is Cassius Howell. I think he flashed quite a bit last year, and I think you're going to see more of him in 2025. I think he wasn't truly a situational player, but it did feel like, he really excelled in the pass rushing down and distances. I think you'll see more of him, and he's the guy that I think is the biggest key in replacing the production of Scorton and Stewart. Elsewhere, I think it's going to be definitely more of a replacement. You look inside to Shamar Turner at the 3 tech. I do think that A&M went out and got some guys in the portal that'll help there along the interior of the defensive line. And you also still have guys coming back like Albert Regis and DJ Hicks who are expected to take steps forward this year. It's the other end spot where I kind of have questions. Who's going to be the bookend opposite of Cassius Howell? And that's what we have to kind of find out during fall camp.
You play defensive tackle. DJ Hicks was a 5-star that came in from Katy Paetow. Hasn't really lived up to that 5-star hype, hasn't really been a starter, been more of a developmental player. Do you think he can still emerge and reach that ceiling, or would we have already seen it by now? And maybe that 5-star label kind of is a disservice to him and the expectations for him now.
I think there's definitely still time for DJ Hicks to take a step forward and live up to that 5-star label. I think he's been a solid player. Again, not quite living up to that 5-star standard. But you do see guys, especially on the interior of the line, develop as they spend more time in a program. He's one of the guys that has been around for a little bit longer. I think he's also gotten to sit behind some really good guys, right? Like you look at what the interior of the defensive line at A&M has been, and even going back to like a guy like Walter Nolan who transferred out, like there has been some really good players along this defensive line for DJ Hicks to kind of develop behind. But I do think that this year is the telling year, right? Like you have to see it this year. I don't think you get a 4th year to kind of figure out what you're doing. This is the time for DJ Hicks, if he's going to show that 5-star potential, to put it on display.
I think my lasting image from the 2024 season for Texas A&M is Mike Elko in the Las Vegas Bowl press conference talking about we have to defend the forward pass better if we want to be a good football team. When you look at the defensive line, I think that's a lot of question marks there. How do they play so much production? I have question marks about the secondary for different reasons. Can a lot of the same ingredients make a better cake, so to speak? Like, what do you think about this secondary?
Yeah, and this is kind of the other puzzling piece, right? You would have expected a Mike Elko defense to be better in the back end, given his experience. And there is a lot of the same guys back. You look at like a Bryce Anderson, who I don't think had the year anybody expected him to have last year. And you look at guys like, I do think there were some good performances from guys like Will Lee. I thought he had a pretty solid 2024 campaign, but you do need to take that next step. And I think that the other piece of it, Tyreek Chappelle, a guy that you lost for a lot of the year, he's going to be back. I think that's a key piece to get back. And then other guys that came in the portal, obviously, I think Julian Humphrey was one of the bigger additions, at least from a name standpoint. You have to wonder if, he's going to push the guys that are returning, like Des Ricks, for starting time. So I think this secondary, I feel a little bit better about the secondary than I do about the defensive line in a lot of ways, even though I think the secondary struggled more. I just feel like this unit's kind of primed to take a step forward. Again, I think Will Lee at corner is going to be a big piece of that. And I just expect a return to form of sorts for Bryce Anderson.
Yeah, I think Mike Elko is going to hurt somebody if it doesn't get better. So I feel like he's going to take that upon himself. I think the biggest ad for A&M in the secondary wasn't personnel; it was Lyle Hemphill. the safeties coach from James Madison, who was also the defensive coordinator there. He's worked with Elko before. Like, you can tell that's a real sticking point. A thing I thought was interesting when I went by A&M in the spring was Elko talked about how big of a jump second-year defenses make in a system. That year one, you're kind of still figuring out what you're supposed to do. You're thinking too much. Maybe you're a step slow. That can lead to allowing big plays, which A&M did a bunch last year, missing some tackles, just kind of like analysis by paralysis or whatever. From your experience, just how much freer, how much faster can you play going into year two of a system? And do you think that's going to be a big jump?
Yeah, I think with your second year in a system, it does depend on the complexity of the system and like what your defensive coordinator's calling. But the more time you have in a system, the more you just know where you're supposed to be on a given play, what your assignments are, what your duties are, and are able to get to the instinctual reactions that allow you to move so much quicker. Mike, to your point, the paralysis by analysis is definitely a big thing for a guy first time in the system, because you're running through your head like, what am I doing in this scenario? What am I doing in this scenario? When you drill it and drill it and drill it and are in the film room and are in the playbook studying it, the more time you have to really get the nuances of a defense down, the more it opens you up to play instinctual and in turn to make plays, right? Like, it's one thing to play assignment football, do what you're supposed to do. At this level, you have to be able to go beyond your duty. And that doesn't really develop until you are comfortable in the system.
When Craven and I talked yesterday for a podcast about A&M's preview for the 2025 season, we did a segment of why is nobody talking about this aspect of a team? And for A&M, it was Mike Elko calling defensive plays. I don't think people are making that big of a deal about it. I don't know if you've seen more people make a big deal about it, but how big of a deal is it, do you think, him taking over defensive play calling?
I think it's massive, and I think it's indicative of what he felt was a subpar performance in 2024. You look at what Mike Elko has done defensively in the past. I think his units at Duke, even when he was a head coach, were solid, but I think there was a little more continuity there with his defensive coordinator. You look at how he did at A&M previously and at Notre Dame. The defenses seem to always improve. Now, him taking a bigger role always worries me. Like, anytime a coach says they're going to be more hands-on, you worry about where that's going to take their attention away everywhere else. And there are so many little nuances to managing a program, from recruitment to, really continuing recruitment, right? Like, you have to continuously recruit your roster in the modern day. But it's a catch-22, because I do think that him taking a bigger role in it, in the defense, day-to-day operations, fingerprints on the defense, should improve this unit. At the same time, like, again, worried about where that's going to take his attention away elsewhere. And you also have to worry, if you're a Texas A&M fan, about it possibly, not being able to fully invest in each part, right? So if you're kind of getting half measures, both as a program manager and as a defensive coordinator, that can be a little bit worrisome. So I think it's a huge deal, because this is likely going to make or break the season.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad he didn't do it in year one. You come in, you can do an autopsy of the program. To your point, you can have your fingers on every single thing, the weight room, the discipline, the nutrition, right? Like, you can kind of get your feet underneath you. I don't guess I mind him returning back to his roots and being like, I have this other stuff figured out. Now I can go fix the thing that I needed to get fixed. My last defensive question for you, and this may be an unfair one off the top of your head, but like, where is Torian York on your A&M linebacker lore recently, right? Like, he feels like he's like propelling himself into like all-time great level in College Station.
Yeah. And this was before my time. But as far as like a locker room culture guy combined with production on the field, he reminds me a bit of like a Dat Win, maybe an undersized guy that just, it seems like everybody in the locker room loves him. And it seems like he just plays as hard as he can. I mean, super banged up last year, still had some massive plays. I'm thinking particularly back to the game against LSU and his performances there. Torian York, I think, he's kind of the epitome of what A&M used to be, right? this kind of hard-nosed, blue-collar, defensive-minded program. And I don't think that there's anybody better to encapsulate that in the modern era than Torian York. Now, again, he has to take a step forward, and I think he does struggle at times with sometimes the speed of the game. I think that's just and to be fair, part of that could have been him being banged up last year. But I definitely think he's getting into that all-time great linebacker conversation at Texas A&M, and this year has the potential to be really cementing for his legacy in College Station.
Jay, let's take it over to the offensive side. A&M has made a huge bet on Marcel Reed this offseason, not getting a transfer quarterback, rolling with the guy who took the job last year. And this could work out, and he takes a step as a passer, and A&M's a dark horse college football playoff team, SEC championship team, with all of the athletes they have at running back and all the offensive linemen returning. Or there's another scenario where he doesn't take a step forward as a passer, and you're left wondering, why did they not pursue a transfer quarterback to compete with him? I know they got Jacob Zeno, but like that was not, oh, Jacob Zeno is going to win this starting job here. What is your opinion of Marcel Reed?
Yeah, the Zeno pick was a depth thing. For Marcel Reed, there's so much potential there. Mm-hmm. And it does feel like he's, he gets another year in a system, right? Like I don't think we maybe give him a fair opinion on that was his first year in a new system, right? And he wasn't the starter going in. So those are two things that really affect the development of a quarterback. This will be the first complete year he has going in as the starter in Colin Klein's system. So I think this is a real shot for him to take a step forward. With that being said, again, like you mentioned, Carter, there is a scenario where he doesn't take that step forward. I am pretty confident in him taking a step forward, but I said the same thing about Connor Wigman last year. So there's just so many variables around it. I think the other piece that you have to touch on is the receivers. There's a lot of turnover at the receiver position. Obviously, you lose probably your best receiver in Noah Thomas, but you get some big transfer portal additions, Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion. You look at a guy like Jerome Miles, who's coming in as a true freshman. I think receiver is one of the few positions where a guy can come in and contribute early. And you look at a guy in Terry Bussey, who we didn't know what side of the ball he was going to be playing most of last year. So I think he has a chance to develop. All of those factors add into the potential of Marcel Reed to have a big year. But I always like to bring up potential just means you haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
So we have to see that advancement. And I think Marcel's primed for it. I'm very wary given my expectations for A&M quarterbacks, basically dating back to Kellen Mond.
How much of a step forward does Marcel Reed need to take as a passer? And by that, I mean, is it possible A&M can win 9 or 10 games by running the ball 70% of the time and just leaning on what he does well? The 7th top offensive linemen are back, that running back stable. Like, does he need to be an above average passer for A&M to reach their ceiling? Or could they be so good at running the football that this looks like Colin Klein at Kansas State, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, I think you can be an average passer and still lead A&M to a solid year. Just minimize mistakes with what you touched on in the backfield. If Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens are both healthy, along with Amari Daniels, I mean, this is about as good of a backfield as I think there is in the SEC. And obviously, we haven't seen a full season out of Reuben Owens yet, so we don't know exactly what kind of player he's going to develop in. But I also don't want to discount Marcel Reed's X factor, right? His legs, his ability to improvise, his ability to do things that maybe weren't there with some previous quarterbacks. I think Marcel Reed, as that electrifying guy that you have to account for in the run game, really helps us and lessens his need to be as good throwing the ball. I think he can be an average passer, contribute in the running game, and A&M can lean on this backfield, which I think that's what Colin Klein will want to do anyways, and be an extremely productive offense. I think you look at, in addition to like the passing game, you just need a few more explosive plays. And I think the guys that they went out and got should add to that. Right. So again, Mike, to your point, average passer is good enough for this A&M team to win 10 games, in my opinion, if the defense takes their step up as well.
Sure.
I know context is everything, but preseason, is 10 wins that marker for you of what a successful season is? Because Craven and I have talked about this with Texas A&M. A lot of the times they're 8-4. It's Texas 8-4 because a lot of the years that's what they're fishing at, and they've paid Jimbo Fisher so much money to go away. They didn't pay him all that money to stay kind of the same of where Jimbo had them. Is that the win mark, 10 double digit, that you want to see this year?
I think it's 9 regular season wins is the mark that would be successful for A&M in 2025. And then you'd like to win the bowl game, but there's so many variables in that I don't want to like count that just yet.
Mm-hmm.
But my mark right now is 9 wins, because I think you look at the landscape of college football. If you win 9 games, and Mike, I think you have some disagreements here on whether these teams should be deserving. But if you win 9 games, I think it in the SEC has the potential to get you into that playoff consideration. I think you look at like the Big Ten this year, they get 4 in last year with Indiana, or sorry, I'd have to look at the numbers. Maybe it was 3. But the Big Ten doesn't seem to have as many teams on the precipice this year. So you're looking at maybe the SEC sneaking in 4 teams. If you're the 4th team at 9-3, I don't know how you look at it and say that this wasn't a successful year.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who they lose to, right? Like if they lose to Notre Dame, Texas, and South Carolina, then yeah, you have an argument, especially if there's not kind of some 11-1 bubble teams out there in the ACC and the Big 12. How likely do you think that is? Like, do you believe that this team can go win 9 games, or do you think that they'll be under that?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule, I think it's likely, but I think it's going to be very tough. And, I look at every possible potential way a team could lose a game. And even with like Notre Dame's obviously the marquee non-conference matchup. UTSA, I think, is going to be decent. Utah State with Bronco Mendenhall should be better, as Mike shows his UTSA shirt. But like you look at the schedule, it's a tough schedule. Auburn should be improved under Hugh Freeze this year. We'll see what Jackson Arnold does there. Some interesting things. Mississippi State, I'm looking at, and I think that's a win.
Better be a win.
Better be.
Florida has the potential to be a very, very, very surprising team for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think DJ Lagway is going to take a massive step forward this year. And when you have a quarterback that can carry a team like that, that is a very scary game for Texas A&M fans, but you're glad to get that one at home. Arkansas feels like they're kind of in the last year of the Sam Pittman era. I feel like even though weird things always happen in that game, we're not in Jerry World anymore. So A&M does have to go to Fayetteville, which maybe adds something to the weirdness that happens in that game traditionally. At LSU, A&M still hasn't won at LSU in the SEC. They have to prove that they can win there before you ever mark that as a win. Even if A&M, was solid last year at home. Missouri, I think Missouri is probably one of the teams that I think is going to be most disappointing in the SEC last year, coming off of what they did in 2024. South Carolina is a team that, to Mike's point, I think could be a playoff contender. I think you look at Lenore Sellers and what they did at the end of last year. You rattle off some incredible wins. You're a score or really a play away from beating both Alabama and LSU. And you beat Clemson, who was in the playoff. And this South Carolina team feels like a team that's going to be a playoff contender. So you close the season off with 2 of your 3 games are against playoff contenders. I think if you win one of those, like that is a massive, massive statement for this team. But November's always been the problem for A&M in the past few years, right? So I think 9 is doable. I don't know that it's super likely, but again, that's the mark for success. So we'll see what happens with the way the schedule shakes out.
Now that we've looked at that schedule, I'm going to throw you a prop question or an over-under question. Over-under A&M getting 2.5 coaches fired this season. And I'm looking at the games of Auburn on September 27th, Hugh Freeze it's now or never for him. Florida,
He
October
wants,
11th.
he wants to get fired. He just wants to go play some golf, man. Give him his payday, get him out of there.
So DJ Lagway, Florida. Billy Napier basically kept his job because of DJ Lagway coming back this year.
Yeah.
Arkansas, October 18th, not in Jerry World. Sam Pittman has been on the hottest of hot seats for what feels like 3 years now. And then a sneaky one, LSU, on October 25th. If they have gone off the rails, and by off the rails, I mean have 2 or 3 losses by the point they play A&M. Over under 2.5, A&M getting 2.5 head coaches fired this year.
I don't think A&M is going to be directly responsible if Hugh Freeze gets fired. So for that reason, I'm taking the under. I think Pittman is likely gone maybe mid-season if A&M wins that game in Fayetteville. I think that's the one where A&M is most likely to be directly responsible. Brian Kelly, I think him getting fired is more because of who he is as a person and just the general unlikability of Brian Kelly. I mean, we saw the SEC media days. Like, he goes to the Grand Canyon and mimes shooting himself with that experience at the. I don't know how you go to the Grand Canyon. Anyways, I'm going on a tangent there. I think LSU generally, I mean, if he wins, they'll be happy with him. But I think there's going to be a quicker turn on Brian Kelly than there is on a guy like Ed Orgeron at LSU. Like, I think the fan base will turn on him quickly if things happen to go south for LSU.
Which is insane to say because, and I agree with you, but it's insane because Ed Orgeron was out 2 years after winning a national championship.
Yeah.
And it could be quicker for Brian Kelly.
I think it very much could be. I think he got saved a little bit with Jaden Daniels and how much of an impact he had on this program. And even then, like, it still wasn't to the LSU standard where they expect to compete for national championships every year. Kelly hasn't done that, right? Like, they haven't been a title contender yet. So looking at all of these things, like, yeah, if LSU like dips into like 6-6 territory, which I don't think they will, but if they did, Baton Rouge would be an upheaval.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they go 8-4, he's gone. Coach O, Les Miles, Nick Saban had all won national championships by the end of year 4. If he hadn't even played for an SEC championship. We talk about it all the time. Like, likability keeps you around for an extra year, and dislikability gets you gone a year before you probably should. And he's not going to stay on for any PR reasons, right? Like, if you're not winning, you're going to get him out of there. I'm planning on going to that October 25th game. Maybe I could scoop you up in Houston on the way. Driving if both of those teams are good, that'll be fun. Speaking of like fan bases turning on a coach, how long does Mike Elko get before I think you and I can both admit that the A&M fan base can get a little finicky, right? They can turn on their own pretty quickly. Like, when does the honeymoon period end? Has it already ended? Like, when does rubber hit road and A&M need to compete for SEC championships and be in the college football playoff?
I think the honeymoon period ends at the end of this season. I think that's just kind of it's a symptom of the transfer portal and NIL and all the things that have changed college football, where I think teams see or fan bases see that you're able to turn programs around quicker. And because of that, the leash is shorter for coaches today, in my opinion. So I do think, like, whereas previously it's like year three is where I think that can change. I mean, overnight. But really, I'm looking at this year. If things go well for Mike Elko, it kind of extends the honeymoon period. If things go poorly, honeymoon period's over. He could be on the hot seat next year.
And how much does Texas being where they're at right now affect his honeymoon period, do you think? Because Craven's always talked about this. College football is only as fun as it is miserable for your rival. And right now at Texas, it's looking pretty good, at least preseason.
Yeah, it plays a big role because Texas coming in. I mean, I think Texas coming into the SEC is part of why they wanted to move on from Jimbo so quick, right? And maybe it wasn't that quick. Maybe it's some of that likability stuff that we talked about with Brian Kelly. But it's definitely a factor. A&M fans would never want to admit that how Texas is doing impacts how they are. But when you look over and you see your neighbor with a shiny new car, a boat, or a new pool or whatever, it makes you want to improve your own standing. And that is the case in college football. When your rivals are doing well, that's another thing that shortens the leash. It's just kind of the nature of the beast with this game and with how quick turnover can happen.
All right, Jay, before we let you out of here, I need an MVP for the offense, an MVP for the defense, and a record prediction.
I think I'm going to take a little bit of a cop out here on the MVP for the offense. I think it's Marcel Reed. For the defense, I think I'm going to go with Cassius Howe as my MVP. I expect him to take a big step forward. I think he's going to be the playmaker. Torian York, I still think is going to be the leader, the heart and soul of this defense. But Cassius Howe is going to be the guy that they rely on for big plays defensively, strip sacks, big tackles for lost, things of that nature. That's why I have him slotted in for that MVP slot. For my MVP on the special teams, I know you didn't ask for this, but I love special teams.
Yeah,
I love the third phase.
I love them too, Jay. It's the most important phase of the game.
I'm going to take Terry Bussey with some big return action. That's what I'm going to go for on the special team side. And then for my record prediction, I am going to go with that 9-3. I think I look at Notre Dame, South Carolina, and Texas as the losses. I think this is the year A&M finally gets it done in Baton Rouge. We'll see. Obviously, that's never an easy environment to go into. But you look at maybe some of the mystique has been lost for Death Valley. Like I think you look at what Alabama did going in there last year, and I realize that's Alabama. But what they did going into Death Valley last year, I think it was Tennessee 2 years ago, where if this game is a morning game or a early afternoon game in Baton Rouge, it seems like it's just not near as intimidating as the night kicks in Death Valley. And I think LSU fans would admit to that as well. But 9-3 is what I'm going for my prediction here for the A&M record.
Jay, always appreciate you stopping by. You can catch him on the Aggie War Pod with Mike Craven coming out during the football season. We'll be on this roller coaster ride all year. Jay, thank you so much for joining the show and giving us a Texas A&M preview.
Thank you guys for having me. Looking forward to seeing how this season plays out.